I just wanted to start off by giving you guys a little bit of my Game Change story. I'm really excited just for everything that's going on here, and it means a lot to me. If you look at a year ago when we were all thinking about making commitments, my wife and I had a lot of reasons not to commit. I was on the verge of taking a new job that was going to mean a salary cut, and we were also getting ready to start a family, and we had been surrounded by all kinds of friends that had infertility problems, just all kinds of problems having kids. So we were already starting to set aside some money just to pay for that. And through all of this, we decided that we were going to make a commitment to lean into God rather than to live in the fear of what might happen. And so our Game Change commitment started as giving this infertility money to this initiative, and just going from there and seeing what happens. And fast forward 10 months to tonight, and we've been able to make all of our Game Change commitments, no problem. I did take the lower paying job, and it's been great. And so we've made all of our commitments, just been completely financially blessed. And my wife just started her 3rd trimester of pregnancy. So there you have it. So Game Change has been great. That's our story. We're glad you're here.
The world says the church is an old-fashioned institution. We say it's a game-changing revolution. The world says the church is obsessed with punishment and guilt. We say Jesus brings freedom. The world says that to win, you have to hold tight to everything you have. We say victory comes when you surrender it all. The world says that poverty is the government's problem. We say it's ours. The world says some people are beyond help. We say roll up your sleeves and get to work. The world says to rely on big donors and government grants. We say it's all about individuals who surrender to God's call. The world says preserve and protect. We say die empty. We can play by the rules of the game. We can say the challenges ahead are too great or that the effort is too overwhelming. Or we can do what we've always done, respond to God's call and choose to run a new offense. We can shrug off the criticism, we can play to win, and we can tell God, wherever He's leading us, we're in.
Well, as I prayed earlier, this night is going to be part information, part inspiration. We've got about 80 minutes. I figure that's about our attention span of things that we'll be receiving from. That's an hour and 20 minutes, and we're already into that. We're going to try to take some questions if we have time. You can text your questions to a number that's going to come up, and we're going to try to deal with that. If not some of those questions tonight, we will deal with them in some forum and get them to you. So this number right here, you can text at any point tonight. It will come up there. Yes, it will. There it is. Those questions right there, and try to keep the questions minimally rude. It's amazing how people, a text message, I'm just going to text in strange, crazy things. It was very funny, but not all that helpful. So there's the place you can text your questions to. And we're looking at Game Change. What does it mean to be a game changer? We're in this campaign where we're trying to, over the next 3 years, change the game in 4 different areas. In an area of importance and in financial dollars, that is multi-site, that is CityLink, that is South Africa, and that is India. And I've been thinking a lot about this. As you hear tonight what's been happening, you're going to see that there is a lot of work that's been done. There's a lot of work yet to be done, and I tell you what, people have been just jumping in order to make a difference. And you know, when you want to change the game, it is always harder. To do the same old things more efficiently is easier than to change your tactics entirely. To do what you've seen have happened before, only in a new and improved way, is always, always easier than changing the game entirely. David changed the game. No one wanted to fight by the rules of the game when they went against Goliath because they couldn't take their sword against Goliath. David changed the rules. He brought a different way of thinking by bringing his slingshot, and it's that ability to change the rules, change the game, that enables breakthrough to happen. I believe that we are on the verge of breakthrough, and even though this idea of changing the game is something that we got from Malcolm Gladwell, who we quoted back in the Game Change campaign, about how he's noticed huge, massive leaps that have changed many things in society, it really ties into what Jesus talked about in the book of Matthew. And here's what it says in the Voice translation. It's a fresh translation that I think helps us understand it well tonight. It says this. Jesus says, "What matters is that you come to me, hear my words, and actually live by them. If you do that, you'll be like the man who wanted to build a sturdy house. He dug down deep, anchored his foundation to solid rock, and during a violent storm, the floodwaters slammed against the house, but they couldn't shake it because of solid craftsmanship. It was built upon rock. On the other hand, if you hear my teachings but don't put them into practice, you'll be like the careless builder who didn't bother to build a foundation under his house. The floodwaters barely touched that pathetic house, and it crashed its ruins into the stand." This is an amazing picture that Jesus gives us that fits in every culture and virtually every situation. If there's something you want to have happen, you want to have it happen quickly, just go out to whatever piece of ground is right there where you want it to be and just start building. You will see something come up out of the ground or come up on top of the ground really, really quickly, but it won't last. I was in construction, and the most tedious part of every construction project is the foundations. And Jesus understood this. It's digging down to get to rock, to actually build on rock, and something like that. Then it takes time for it to actually come up out of the ground. And changing the game, we are changing the game in numerous ways. One of the ways that we're changing the game is we're not like builders who want immediate results that are not going to last. We are taking our time and building foundations of things that are going to have sustainability and results. Part of what's unique about talking about this is we've never been through this before, and I can't identify any pastors that I know that I can partner with to talk about this. I don't know if you understand how weird this is. Nobody goes into a building campaign in the midst of the worst recession of our lifetimes. Nobody builds simultaneously 2 buildings at the same time, CityLink and our next site, Florence. Nobody that I know, I'm going to be with 10 pastors who are all very large church pastors the next 3 days, a roundtable discussion. We're going to be down in Dallas. And none of those people, none of those churches that are well known, none of them are taking on a multi-million-dollar project for people in poverty in their city, building it and taking responsibility for it. None of them. None of them are actually looking to have results and are establishing organizations in multiple continents. Now, they all give money to missions, but I'll tell you what, that's the way the game has always been played, and it's wonderful that churches and organizations do that. Wonderful. We all need to give money to organizations and other cultures and other places. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, traction has not happened in many countries because the same old, let's just get people to fund the same old methods without any accountability or results doesn't bring lasting change. We are today building on rock. We are like master craftsmen who are taking the time to have something that is actually about results. Not we feel good, we wrote a check, but actually sustainable results to multiple people groups on multiple parts of the world. Friends, I tell you what, you and I are part of something big. You should be happy about that. Right? If at any moment tonight you want to clap, it's kind of weird. We're going to be going back and forth between information, inspiration. So any point you want to scratch your head. Any point you want to clap, go ahead and clap. This is how we are changing the game. So we're going to look at our 4 projects that we're looking at in order, and we're going to have the person who's basically the master craftsman for each one of those projects come forward and talk with us. So we're going to start with multi-site, and we've got a little video. Let's take a look at this.
If it weren't for Crossroads Mason having been formed, I don't really know where I would be right now. I had a little bit of exposure to a couple different church communities by way of family, but it was never something that I had really adopted. You would probably could argue that I was an atheist, although I held on to the belief that maybe there was some other power at work in the universe.
We really want to engage people who don't know who Jesus is, who have given up on church, but not necessarily on God. And we want to help them understand that we speak with a different dialect. We speak in a language that is unique to Christendom and helps them to really figure out that who I thought Jesus was is really different than who he actually is. And it draws them into the things that we're doing around here that just impact so many different people.
After coming for the first few weeks, I began to volunteer. I actually joined a community group and really began to read the Bible and understand other people's experiences, and I wanted to be more involved in my community, and to me this was very much my community. That's what set in motion a lot of the things that led to where I'm at now. I like to say that it wasn't the fact that I sought God, it was almost like God saw an opportunity to expose me to him, and I realized what I was missing out on.
Yes, some of the life change that's happened in our site up in Mason. We have a site in Oakley and a site in Mason. And what we're trying to do in the midst of the Game Change campaign is to not only help the least of these, those in poverty, those who are being oppressed, but primarily bring the lost to a loving Father. We're about the lost and we're about the least. Now, we don't like to say lost very often because if someone says, dude, you're lost, it's like very insulting. Let me tell you something. I've been following Jesus for about 30 years right now, and the longer I follow him, the harder I have to work to remember what it was like to not know Christ. I tell you what, when I did not know Jesus, I was not only on a grease pole to hell, I was lost. I did not understand God's love for me. My life was not fitting together. It just wasn't. And the greatest joy in ministry has always been and will always be connecting somebody to God's furious love. It's always the number one thing we will do, always. There will be United Ways and Salvation Armies and all kinds of other great organizations that help the least of these. Wonderful, and we're going to do that very, very aggressively. But the one thing United Way or nobody else will do other than a local church is say, I believe there's a God who has furious love for you, and I'm going to go outside of myself to you to connect you to him. That's what multi-site is about. Going to where people are. Going to where people are and speaking their language. This last summer, as I mentioned before, I was in Greece. And fascinating. I saw multi-site in a unique way when I was at Greece. We were in Athens, and in Athens, there's actually a site that's in the book of Acts where Paul goes to what's called Mars Hill. It's also called the Areopagus. It's a high mound of rock right underneath the Acropolis, which was where all the temples were pagan deities. I think we have a picture of this right here. I'll show this to you. This is the Acropolis, up there again. Things are up high because the gods never come down here amongst us, so you got to put it all up high. And then that rock thing right there, it's the Areopagus. It's where Paul's interacting with the elite of society, the elite thinkers. He lands right in the water, and he goes right here, and he says, I see that you're very religious. And this was a compliment to them. I see you're very religious. I also see you have a marker here to the unknown God. Let me submit to you that I know who the unknown God is. And he speaks a language they understand. He actually affirms them. He's complimentary to them. Nowhere in the midst of this does he exegete the scriptures. Nowhere in the midst of this does he give them a Hebrew word they haven't known. Nowhere in the midst of it does he drop theological jargon that they don't understand without defining it. He speaks to where they are on their level. That's what Crossroads does. Whether it's a Wednesday or a Sunday or a Saturday night, we speak to where people are on their level. It's the first and most important mission of everybody who desires to follow God, because God came to us and we go to people who are disconnected from him. That's the most important thing, always the most important thing. Then I went from there to Corinth. I thought that was very, very fascinating, going over to Corinth. And actually the distance from Athens to Corinth is about the difference from Oakley to Mason or Oakley to Florence. What was he doing? He was going on, actually, if you have a Bible, I hope you have one. If you don't have one, you might want to get one sometime. In the back of your Bible, they have these maps. They have these maps that show the missionary journeys. And you'll see it's very methodical and systematic. This city, then this city, then this city, this city. Paul goes from Athens over to Corinth, and the first place he goes, and I've seen this, but actually I took this photo. This is right where it was. This is the marketplace. This is the marketplace in Corinth, and actually where we are is the water. And you would head right from the water into the marketplace. This is where all the businesses were taking place, and this is where Paul would reason with people. And it struck me again, that as passionate as I am, and as we are, about those who are in poverty, those who are in difficulty, because Jesus said we should be. Jesus said, if you haven't done it for the least of these, you haven't done it for me. That's what he said. Jesus constantly exalts the widow's mite, the person who's in poverty, but her generosity is actually more so than somebody who has a job because she gives all that she has. Jesus constantly affirming and including those in poverty and saying our response to them is a major indicator of our response to the love of God. And the early church always went to normal people who had jobs. That was always the first and foremost thing that happened. Paul goes to the elite in Athens. He goes to Corinth in the marketplace and starts reasoning there. He starts using illustrations like mirrors that were people who were able to afford had them. Jesus includes people in his life. His disciples all had jobs. They had businesses. They were even elite, sometimes money swindlers as tax collectors. And I just want to help us remember, as excited as we are and as much as we're going after blessing those who are the least of these and bringing them to a new place, we will always be about our friends who are disconnected, and until everybody in Cincinnati understands the furious love of their Father and is adopted into his family, our job is never done. Never done. So, here's some of the things we've been doing in Florence. Here's a timeline, just for example, of Florence. A lot of timelines you'll see tonight. This is some of the intense work that we've been operating on, going from now to when we're looking to open in August 19th. That's when we're looking to have a groundbreaking. We were looking and hoping for spring. And as you know, man, spring, talk about an aggressive schedule. We always are erring on the aggressive. If you look at this time frame, I challenge you to find any business, any organization that is conceived of a building and is going to have it operating in as short of a time span as that. I'd like to have it spring, but spring can't happen for a number of reasons. It's going to be August 19th. Wish it was spring, but not going to be able to happen for a variety of different factors. If you're going, what kind of factors? Don't only have 80 minutes tonight. Text us in. We'll try to get to your question. If not tonight, in another forum. This, by the way, is just one aspect of our multi-site stuff that we're doing. It's just one aspect. We also have other sites that we're looking at, either to purchase or to rent. And as we said before, I can't tell you what those are because they may fall through at any time, and then people get their hopes all set, risen, and then they'll go away. This is the very calling of God for us, is to speak normal language to normal people. And not only are we able to do that in a unique way around our city, but as God uses other churches to speak their unique language to other people and bless our city, what we're able to do through Multi-Site is to pull a wider and wider base to bless our city and to take on the almost horse-choking, groundbreaking, hard work of establishing ministries that produce results on rock. On rock. It's easier to just send checks places, but it's harder to take responsibility for actual results, long-term sustainable results, which is how we want to change the game. And to do that, we need a wider financial base. And that's part of what Multi-Site does, is it enables us to do that. So with that, we're going to get ready to look at our number 2 initiative, and that is CityLink. And as John Mark, Outer Slice, the executive director for CityLink, starts to make his way up, we'll check this out.
I know that I wanted to be a nurse, but I'm also a single parent with a special needs child. It's like every avenue that I tried to take, it just wasn't, it seemed like it was too big. I was sitting in service at Crossroads. They were talking about CityLink, and I had heard CityLink so many times, and so finally I just said, I need to call. I need to find out, because if this is going to help me move from poverty, I need to figure out how can it help me do it.
CityLink is an integrated campus of care where people who are in poverty can come to find their needs met and an opportunity to find their dreams realized. It's a place where they can come find a job. They can help learn financial literacy. They can get access to parenting classes. They can access health and wellness services. And it's an opportunity for many agencies in our city, faith-based and non-faith-based, to come together and provide those services in an integrated, coordinated way.
The concept of CityLink, I think, is awesome because it's like one-stop shopping. You don't have to go all over the city. It's all in one place. And I think a lot of time people are hindered because they can't get everywhere.
Hello, good evening.
Welcome, John Mark.
Hello.
I reserve the right to interrupt anyone at any time.
And I'm sure you will.
Just because I can.
Well, tonight we want to start by sharing something that I found in the Bible. Seems fitting since we're in church. When I look at poverty, there's a verse in Deuteronomy that seemed a bit perplexing to me at first. It's 15:4, and in there, in the opening, it says, "There need be no poor people among you." And then it talks about the graciousness of God and the resources He's given us, but then it also talks about that there will be poor people among you. And so after reading and reflecting and thinking about this, the message that came out to me, and it gives us pretty clear instructions on how to act and treat the poor, is that we've got the resources at hand, but we are not appropriately utilizing those. God has given us gifts, and we have the means to help those in poverty, and we need to reach out to them with open and generous hearts. And so we're hoping today that CityLink is going to be the way that we do that in Cincinnati. And so we're going to go through an aggressive timeline and planning with you to share with you some information and talk about CityLink. The statistic in Cincinnati, when God says the poor will always be with you, in Cincinnati there's over 71,000 people in poverty. And this poverty threshold is set pretty low. That's enough to fill Paul Brown Stadium. That's 1 in 4 people, which also means that our city is one of the poorest in the country. This is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to us. It's not acceptable to us as a church. And Shwana touches on a lot of the reasons that these problems exist. Right now, the services are a bit fragmented, so it's hard to get around. There's geographic barriers, so people are relying on public transportation. It's even harder for them to get to the services that they need. Also, the complexity of having multiple case managers focused in different areas, you may have competing priorities. And that's where CityLink comes in. CityLink is going to enable us to have one center that enables people to come and access various services in an integrated fashion. And so by doing that, we're eliminating geographic barriers, we're eliminating the complexity by having one integrated plan. Beyond that, what we're able to do is with one point of entry that comes up, and I think we've got a graphic of our model, people come in, have one point of entry, you sit down and do an assessment. You understand the person, meet them where they're at, and then create a plan. That plan is furthered by existing partners in the community who have been doing great work that we're bringing together to do even more together. And that's when all of you also come in. The work that we're doing is going to be fueled by volunteers. It's not possible for us to fuel enough with just our financial giving to fund all the positions we need to reach those in poverty. But by getting a volunteer army mobilized, we can partner with these organizations and with these steps to help walk people out of poverty one by one, changing 2 lives at a time. The more that we've looked at this, the more I'm excited, the more I'm convinced that this is going to be truly game-changing. We've done great benchmarking to see this model and see it in action, but what they haven't had is that missing piece of the volunteer mobilization. So we're going to take the best practices that exist, and then we're going to amp it up. We're wrapping in more services, and we're wrapping in volunteer capacity building throughout, which is just fantastic to see. So what have we been up to? We've got a model, we've got a building, we've got commitments from you guys as our lead gifts. So what we've been doing next is enlisting partners. So our model that we've got in terms of the overall organizational flow, you'll see a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. So you've got the client in the middle, but then you've got employment assistance, legal assistance, transportation, all those different points that you can read. When you think of the analogy of putting your rocks in the right places, we've been going after the big rocks. And what that means for us is we've been going after the employer assistance, workforce development, Cincinnati Works. We've been going after financial education with Smart Money. And we've been going after education, enlisting Cincinnati State. These organizations are the leaders in the community. And we've been helping a new startup, Changing Gears, which is going to take a whole new look at transportation, helping people out of poverty with transportation. these organizations, just so everyone understands, like we sat back when I came on board and said, what are the best organizations we could work with if we could dream big? And those were the organizations. And they've all come open-handedly and said, how can we do more together? And that's why this has just been kind of a miraculous adventure we've been on. So we've identified and enlisted new partners. That is clap-worthy.
That is awesome. No, honestly, the best in class in the city, and someone should ask this. I'm going to throw you a curveball right away. Yeah. I just gave a big plug about how we want to bring people to Christ and all that kind of stuff. Some people might say, well, those are not necessarily faith-based organizations. Is anyone going to have a hard time if some of our volunteers are sharing their faith with somebody?
Absolutely not. Hopefully that's the right answer.
That's the right answer, John.
We believe, just as Brian said, you need to meet people where they are. That's why we're doing multi-site. We also need to meet people where they are to serve them, establish authentic relationships. In reading the Bible, I never see anywhere that Jesus goes out and says, you've got to believe in me first before I'm going to do a miracle or heal you or help you. So we're going out with authenticity to meet people where they are, to help them. And through that, build relationships. And through those relationships, share our faith. And so it is basically another way to reach people. But we need to also realize that these people have real immediate needs that we need to help them with, because that's what we're called to do.
Excellent. Sorry for the curveball. Keep going. You're good.
Great.
All the rest of you, be ready. Go ahead.
So we've identified and enlisted partners. We've been working to revise the facility design. In some of the old designs, you saw really fancy things like a grass roof. Unfortunately, those have been all cut. We've been a little more fiscally responsible instead of dreaming about the facility. So we've got the facility revised. We've been working with High Five, which is a great partner in this. We've enlisted the help of an owner's representation because we actually are doing physical construction on the project now as well. We've been doing community engagement, so enlisting partners. There was a little pushback on this project originally, but now we've got a great team of partners who have come together, as well as people from the community. And we've also been working on the program development. So all these pieces are happening simultaneously, a lot of balls in the air, a lot of concurrent engineering, but we're doing that because we're going aggressively after poverty in our city. The organizations that we mentioned, some of you are probably wondering, well, what do they do? What does this look like? Well, Cincinnati Works in workforce development, it's kind of a vague term. They help people find jobs, so they do job readiness. They help people look for jobs. They do job placement. And then they help them understand what does a long-term career look like and how do we help them with advancement. They've also done a great job of looking how do you help remove barriers. So we're going to be leveraging a tremendous amount of strength from them. Smart Money, they do budgeting. So if we get people new jobs and more money's flowing through the system, we need to help people manage that money. And so financial management is what Smart Money specializes in. Cincinnati State Alive, you guys probably recognize, great education. They partner with CPS for adult literacy, adult education, GED, all those things that can help people take that next step forward. So it's been fascinating. As I mentioned earlier, on August 10th, we had a great celebration. We had 440 people join us for the groundbreaking of CityLink. We've got some photos. There were some speeches. We're not scowling. The sun was just in our eyes. We were all very happy that day. There were some shiny shovels that were moving around, which has enabled us to this week actually have physical construction occurring there. This celebration was fantastic. 440 people that joined us. Politicians getting up and talking about how this is going to be changing for the city. Different partners coming together and saying that how they're looking forward to doing more through this center. So it was just a fantastic, inspirational day, and it's just the start of it, and so we're tremendously pleased. One of the things that Brian talked about initially was the analogy of David and Goliath. And when we talk about taking on these big, big items, it's the Goliaths in the room, right? And so further in that story, when you read it, David slays Goliath, but the story doesn't end there. After that, the army behind David moves forward and takes on the rest of the land and slaughters the army behind Goliath. This has been, is, and always will be a citywide initiative. And so you guys are like our Davids. They have led the charge, and you've done a fantastic job. But what we're doing now is enlisting support of the rest of the community. So we're going out for a citywide campaign. We've got a volunteer team in place to help support that. We have received a check from Greater Cincinnati Foundation for $100,000, which is a great start.
Let me pause right here. First of all, this CityLink in the vision is way, way bigger than just getting a building up and going, which we're going to be able to do. Bringing people and funding that for the long term is a lot of money. And so this is what the other campaign that other people in Cincinnati are about. And I want to make sure you understand something. He has said the Greater Cincinnati, when they told me this a couple months ago, I said, you're kidding me. The Greater Cincinnati Foundation is the most respected, oldest, and wealthiest foundation in the history of Cincinnati. Greater Cincinnati Foundation, it is the most respected of all of them. And for them to have a gift of $100,000 shows the trust that many in the city have to the things that we've been talking about and doing. I want you to understand, 7 years ago, this has been going for 7 years? Is it longer than that? 7 years. If we wanted to stay playing the game the way the game was always played, we would have built it on sand 7 years ago. We would have just given money to all the same old, same old. And all the same old need money, and God is using all those folks. I'm telling you what, the reason why these folks are starting to see this vision and the city is coming together is because you have been patient building on solid rock. It's starting to come up out of the ground, and the results are going to be there. Way to go.
It's amazing. And to have $10 million of unrestricted funds is simply unheard of in the nonprofit world. It enables us to do things right. Which is Crossroads Giving. That's Crossroads. Which is Crossroads Giving. It enables us to do things right and in the right way. And what we want to do tonight is obviously share information, celebrate with you. And we've got a great timeline up here that shows the kind of progress that we've made in terms of I came on board, which isn't that big of a milestone, but then some people may regret that later. We've been doing redesign. We had a kickoff meeting when we're talking about getting more people involved where we hosted 40 churches which enlisted their support. We've been winning grants we've been enlisting partners, doing the groundbreaking, and then launching this fundraising campaign, all in preparation for the doors to open next fall. So if you're wondering what can I do today, because I see we're not like hiring staff and training volunteers until later, when we're talking about that army that moved behind David, we've got an invitation for you tonight. Hopefully, all of you guys are in contact with your communities and may even have friends that don't go to Crossroads. This is a citywide initiative and one that we feel is important for the city. So at the Info Center, we've got these cards that say CityLink Center and then join the movement on the back. This is a tool for you when you're talking with your friends. If they care about the city, they care about poverty, they don't go to Crossroads, to invite them. Simply say, hey, our church is in, and we're in big to go after poverty in our city, and we can use you too. And so this will take them to a page where they can learn more information about CityLink and have the opportunity to financially support this center as well. If you want more information, we also have these brochures out at the Info Center, and so we welcome you to invite your friends to be the army, to follow us in this effort. And we just want to say thank you. Thank you for your faithfulness, because this is really going to be game-changing in creating a one-stop, concentrated, integrated center that's going to be fueled by volunteers to change the face of poverty in Cincinnati.
Awesomeness. Awesome. Way to go, John Mark. All right, in a moment, we're going to take a look at a video that's going to get us ready for Rob Seddon, our master craftsman in South Africa. And remember, we have a phone number. If you want to text questions, we'll get to them as we can tonight, or certainly we'll get your answers. I think we got a little text message number we can put up there again. Yes? No? Yes? It will be there. Okay. And let's take a look at this video.
It was dark when I found you. I'll build you a house in the oak tree outside, and you can come back whenever you'd like. Don't be frightened, I'll set you up right, 'cause everyone needs somebody sometime. I'll leave the light on so you know I'm at home, and you can come in. You won't be alone. Don't be scared of the night, 'cause I'll fix you up right. 'Cause everyone needs somebody sometime.
All right. That's what you just saw is a commercial that an organization in South Africa called the Topsy Foundation put together, and they aired in South Africa, okay? And in case you didn't catch it, it was going backwards. So they nursed this woman back to health over 90 days. Some of our people got to meet her. Her name was Selena. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. And that is an organization that obviously gets it. And it's an organization that understands that relationships are so important. You have to go into people's homes. It's an organization we're talking to about hopefully working together in the future. And we decided not to show you the documentary footage from South Africa because when we created that a year ago, that was a very specific solution for a very specific situation in Mamelodi. And unfortunately, we didn't have the right partner to move forward with that. We would have been building on sand and not rock. So we made the decision to move in a different direction, one that we think is much stronger and one that's going to lead to greater success in the future. I want to start by showing you some data. I'm actually going to bring the data out here. I want you to look at these graphs, if we can bring them up, please. Maybe. Okay. Yes, I'm showing you graphs today. Every dot up here is a country. Okay? The bigger the dot, the more population that country has. I've marked the United States and South Africa so you can see them. The bottom axis, the x-axis, that's GDP. Okay? So the further to the right that your country is, the wealthier you are. The y-axis, up and down, that's life expectancy. So the higher you are, the longer someone in your country is expected to live.
So we're winning then.
That's right.
USA #1.
In 1903.
Okay.
In 1903, we're winning.
Right.
Yes. So where you want to be is that top right corner because you're healthy and you're wealthy. Now we're going to put this data into motion. I want you to watch what happens. Okay, you'll see that there is the rich world, the European countries, the North American countries leading the way, and the African countries are blue, right? They're kind of falling behind. But here in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the whole world starts to rise up. Medicine gets better, technology gets better, communication gets better, but you still have countries behind. And South Africa is really tracking with the rest of the world, but watch what happens here when we reach the 90s. Yeah, South Africa falls off a cliff. And this ends in 2009 with South Africa having a life expectancy equal to some of the poorest countries in the world. Now, what happened in the 90s? AIDS, yeah. So let me show you another graph. I want you to look at this one. Okay, same deal, but this time the y-axis is number of people in your country living with HIV. It's not people who've died of AIDS, it's people living with HIV, and it's a total number, not a percentage. This starts in 1981. We don't even really know what AIDS is at this point, so really everyone's at zero, but watch what happens when we put this into motion. It's absolutely shocking. South Africa ends up double anyone else in the world. You'll see India there, that huge circle in the middle. They have 2.1 million people living with HIV out of 1.1 billion. South Africa has 5.5 million people out of 44 million total. That's 1 in 8 people. If that was the US, we would have over 40 million people in the US living with HIV. And that is a huge burden on your society. It's not just medical. It affects everything. It affects your medicine, it affects your food, it affects your economy, it affects absolutely everything in your country. And you need help to come out of that. And one other thing I want to share is you'll see South Africa is not one of the poorest countries in the world. They have a lot of resources. And what that tells me is those problems are man-made. You can't attribute them to famine or lack of resources or war or things like that. Those are all attributed to decades and decades of brutal, evil, race-based apartheid rule. South Africa is still recovering from that. They'll be recovering from that for a long, long time. And those are relationships that have been destroyed, people who can't work together, people who don't trust each other, people who can't love each other. And I believe that the church, if we're called to reconciliation, there's nowhere in the world we need to be other than right there, right in the middle of that. And that's what we're doing, and that's why we're moving forward in South Africa. Our ultimate goal is to use the gifts that God has given Crossroads to change the game in South Africa. We know what those gifts are. We know we're really good at mobilizing volunteers. How many people in here have been to South Africa? Yeah, it's a ton. We've had over 1,500 people go to South Africa over the last 5 years. We're really good at that. We're really good at systems. We're really good at putting systems in place and system thinking. And we're really good at bringing partners to the table and lifting them up and making them better. Okay, so we now are going through a process in South Africa where we're looking and finding people who need those gifts to make a difference. Okay, let me show you the timeline. I'll show you a little bit about what we've been doing. As you all know, back in February, we made the very tough decision to go in a new direction. But it was a decision that we are very thankful for today. We know it was the right decision, and it's going to lead to great success in the future. We started this networking and vetting process where we called everybody we knew. We have a great foundation in South Africa. We talked to the U.S. ambassador to South Africa. We talked to health officials, government officials, churches. We've talked to everybody. We've been paying people on the ground in South Africa to do research for us, to go out and visit sites and write back reports to us. I've personally been to South Africa 3 times this year, have another trip coming up. I have a ton of miles. So, and they keep coming, they keep coming.
You're going to tithe those to me, right?
Right, yeah. We're doing, right. You can raise my salary a little bit. We're doing our due diligence, all right? And what we're doing that's different than the way the West has acted in the past is we are going in and we are building relationships with people. We are taking the time to do this right. We're going in, we're having meals with people. We're playing golf. We're having fun together. We're going in, we're working side by side to see how we work together, and if it works and if it doesn't. We are taking the time that's necessary to build relationships because that's the only way that we can move forward in the right way in South Africa. It's going to take a while, but we're already moving through that process. And that process has led to 2 organizations that we are really excited about. That process has not ended. We're going to keep going through it, but 2. First of all, Grace Bible Church. A lot of you probably saw Moses Sono speak about a month ago.
Talk about the learning we had. This was a learning we had about why we need to be with multiple organizations and not just one.
Yeah. We learned the lesson of not putting all your eggs in one basket, right? Our past relationship in Mama Lodi was everything in one place. And when that fell apart, everything fell apart. So we've learned that lesson that we are now pulling multiple partners to the table and spreading that out amongst and tapping into the gifts of multiple partners. That's why I'm talking to you about partners that aren't even connected. And we're still going through that process. So Grace Bible Church, Moses Sono was here. He spoke about a month ago. This is just an awesome organization, bigger than Crossroads. They have satellites all over South Africa. And the thing that's most exciting about them is when we talk to people in South Africa who don't go to Grace Bible Church, and they say, that's who you have to talk to because they are making a difference. Those are difference makers, and that gets us excited. And we're talking to them. We've been there. They've been here. We're going back there. They're coming back here. And we're going to continue to move through that process to see how that plays out, how we might work together in the future. Another organization is the Topsy Foundation, the commercial we showed you. Okay, that's an organization that delivers HIV and TB care in rural South Africa, in a 5-village area that's one of the poorest areas of South Africa. And the thing that's so exciting about Topsy is when we go into that community, people say, thank God for Topsy. They say they have changed everything about this community. We absolutely love Topsy. And so we look at that, and this is just an incredible organization that we want to work with. We visited them multiple times. We're going to be going back, and hopefully there's going to be some work there together that we can do. A couple other things. The Thanksgiving food drive. You know, we've done that every year. We've sent 2 containers to South Africa full of food every year. We're doing that again this year. Yeah, this year. That'll be coming up pretty soon. At the end of November, we'll be collecting that food. 1 container is going to Grace Bible Church. They have huge feeding programs, and that's going to be a tremendous blessing to them in the short term as we have these conversations. Another container is going to Topsy. Topsy has a huge feeding program, and that's going to bless them as well. So we're going to continue to move forward with that. Another thing we're doing is we're establishing our own nonprofit in South Africa. We've been navigating the South African legal system, and believe me, just getting a South African lawyer to call you back is one of the toughest challenges I've ever had in my life. But it's working, and by the end of this year, we're going to have a nonprofit in South Africa that will allow us to do business on the ground. It will allow us to pull multiple partners in together, and it's really going to change things for us going forward. And then finally, we're about relationships.
Rob, stop right there. Why would that change us versus what we had before? What's the difference there?
It will allow us to hire employees. It will allow us to enter into contracts in South Africa on our own that are not controlled by other people, so we can control those. It will allow us to ship things back and forth, like equipment and things like that, much easier. It opens up an entire array of
So what we had before was really, we were a check-writing organization to charity and faith and had no ability to have any say in infrastructure or anything.
That's right.
And now with this, we have the ability to actually build a more solid foundation for ongoing sustainability.
That's right. And we're taking control of the things that we can and should control. And at the same time, opening that up to other partners to come partner with us. So, and finally, I'm going to say, trips are going to happen again. And they're going to happen in 2012. We have to get people together. All right? That's how relationships are built. Staying in each other's home, eating each other's food, working together. And trips are going to happen again, and they're going to start next year. Now, it might not be the big 300-person thing for a little while. That takes a little while to pull off. But trips are going to start again. So you will have the opportunity, if you want, to go back to South Africa and help us as we create these relationships. And we're heading in a really, really good direction. It's going to take a while, but it's going to be really good. So, thank you.
Rob Seddon, Master Craftsman. Wonderful. Our next Master Craftsman is going to be Don Jared, who's overseeing all of our justice work in India. And while he makes his way, we'll have a little Game Change recap.
The State Department tells us that there are about 2.3 million women and children who are held in forced prostitution. So you should just take the population of the entire metropolitan Cincinnati area, and that's fewer than the number of women and children who are right now ground up in the business of rape for profit. The understanding has been, well, this is just a generic symptom of poverty. People are poor and they desperately let their children go so they can go be prostitutes.
But the reality is, at some point of time, they were either tricked and deceived and sold into prostitution, or lured through some kind of means.
Just a couple of weeks ago, we rescued a very young girl, and within minutes of bringing her out of the brothel into the car, she turned to our aftercare worker and asked her, "What brothel are you going to sell us to?" And our aftercare worker said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You're going to sell us into another brothel. That's what happens."
These girls do not trust anyone. And they certainly don't trust the police, and they don't know the IJM staff or any rescuing organization staff at all. The kind of work that IJM does to do rescue and restoration, but also to incarcerate perpetrators and deter others from trafficking more children, begins with a foundation of aftercare.
The traffickers are making a bet, and they're making a bet that goes something like this. The Christian do-gooders, they show up a little late, and they quit early. So sure, they're here, there's some attention to the problem, but the lack of attention over time will just drive them away. But the sex traffickers are there 24/7, completely committed to these girls, looking after them, keeping track of them every single day.
How many times in your life do you get to save someone's life? How many times in your life do you get to stand up and do something that seems impossible?
So millions of women and children in forced prostitution in India, this is the work of an enemy. Not just the traffickers themselves, the mercenaries who take the women and children, but a spiritual enemy, an enemy who seeks to steal and kill and destroy. This enemy is to be combated, and the question is, who is going to stand up and get in the fight? I look at the work that we're doing in India, and I want to tell you sort of about the secret weapon that we're using in this fight. And that secret weapon that seems to bind everything in this India initiative together, if not everything in all the initiatives together, is the power of the local church. The power of the local church. There are just some things that we at Crossroads are not able to do without our brothers and sisters in the Indian church. We don't live in India. We don't speak Hindi. We don't speak Bengali. We don't speak a plethora of languages that are spoken there. We don't understand the culture. We don't understand the religion. How can we help? How can we respond to a situation that is frankly overwhelming? Meanwhile, we have brothers and sisters in the Indian church, many of whom are completely unaware that there's a problem. That seems just mind-boggling, but it's true. Many are just completely unaware of the enormity of the red light areas, of the reality of prostitution, and the reality of the violence and force and coercion that goes into making a sex slave. And when I look at what the India Initiative is doing, it seems to me that we are waking a sleeping giant. And that giant is the church, the local church in India. Here's what I mean. Every part of our initiative, as you'll see from the timeline slide that we're going to show here in just a second, all of them depend on us connecting in relationship with our brothers and sisters in the Indian church. Now let's start with the coolest part first, okay? If you look in the middle, you will see Mumbai Home Opens. That is because we have opened our first aftercare home in, I said it wrong. Calcutta Home opened. Calcutta Home is open, sorry. I'm thinking ahead, yes. Sorry about that. So what is that? That is a home with it's in a temporary facility. It opened in July, so not very long ago. It has 6 girls in it, and these are girls who have sort of come up from rescue in an aftercare home, and they're moving towards freedom. They're moving towards a place where they will be able to live independently. I think we have a slide with a picture of those girls at the place where they're going to be living. The home itself is in only just a temporary facility. In the later part of this year, we hope to move to about a 6,000-acre compound or 6,000 square foot compound with about an acre of property around it, which will then house in excess of probably 25 residents. We're able to do these things, and we're able to do them at this pace because we've partnered with a Christian indigenous church planting organization called Jatio Christo Prokar Samiti, which we just call JKPS, but they've never been involved in trafficking stuff until they started to hear about the work of rescue that IJM was doing. And as a result, we now are partnering with them for the aftercare home that they already have been running for about a year for minors, with about 25 minors in it. And we will be creating this transitional home that will bring girls farther along on the spectrum of independence and freedom. And if you look at what we're doing in Mumbai, we hired Keith D'Souza back in January. Keith was working at Lintas, which is a major marketing firm, probably the preeminent marketing firm in India. And he left his job, right? He left his job.
And Don, how did we hire him? We hired him because we're all being generous, and we were able to do that.
That's true. That's true. And, you know,
sometimes you just hear, oh, yeah, that's because no. All these things happen because we all make commitments above and beyond what we regularly give. So way to go. Awesome. Keep going.
Well, that's true. And, you know, Keith himself, you know, he took big risks too, right? Because he's only known us for a short while. He leaves his job with a company car. People told him he was crazy to go out on this kind of a limb and you're doing what? With girls, that are rescued? But Keith has connections in the Indian church. He has connections with people who can help us be far more effective than we would have been otherwise. And as a result, we have been partnering with and we have been building relationships with a couple of different Christian church denominations, one of which we just engaged with in July. We had the Go India trips. Anybody here go to the Go India trips? Yes. Booyah. I'm going to tell you, these Go India folks went over with such humility and such servanthood that the Indian church folks are still talking about the fact that we went over, we didn't have an agenda, we listened, and as a result, this denomination has come forward and they say, well, we have a building and we have some operating funds, so how about if you do one of your transitional homes in our building and we'll give you 25% of the operating costs? See, the truth is the girls they do need the church. They need Crossroads. They need the Indian church. But, you know, the reality is also that we need the girls. We need the girls. What do you do when you face an active enemy? And what do you do when you face a tragedy of these proportions? As I think about the work that we're doing in India, it reminds me of a quote. It's from World War II. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese were celebratory. They thought they had dealt, and they really had dealt, a crippling blow to the United States that would sideline the United States out of the war and would allow them to be in a strategically advantageous position. But the admiral who ordered the attack was not celebrating. And in fact, he told his confidants this. He said, "I fear that all we have done is to waken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." And that is precisely what we need to have. We need to have a terrible resolve to see this through, because we can reach the end of slavery in India. We really can. If we can waken the sleeping giant that is the Indian church, and the church needs these girls, and we need these girls too. Thanks. Yeah.
Dolph, before you leave, two questions for you. One,
sure.
How big is that facility going to be that we're going to partner with that church?
Well, that one could be probably around 20. We already have plans for this. This is like more details. I'm a big picture guy, right? Yeah. So we're also looking at another transition home. We hope to have up and running this year. We have to get that church denomination ready to actually do the work. These are very hard homes to run. We've got to build capacity into the church to help them to do that. Keith's also connected us with another organization, and we're approaching and understanding an agreement with them to do a home that will be on 7 acres of land just outside of Mumbai that'll have as many as 96 beds.
Phenomenal. Amazing. Amazing. Now, talk about building on rock. We're starting to gain momentum here. One of the major things that we did is bring in a master craftsman. Jesus' words there, at least in that interpretation, was you coming all the way in. So just how you doing?
I'm doing a lot better than I was in that video.
You were a bit stressed.
Yeah, a little stressed back then. Yeah, I'm doing good, thanks.
Hey, let's thank Don. Yeah. Way to go. Awesome. All right, believe it or not, I think we're going to actually have some time for a little bit of Q&A. But before we do, as we get ready for that, so you guys back there, if you want to start synthesizing some of those questions, we're going to jump order a little bit. I'm going to bring up our finance guy, also known as CFO, also known as anal bean counter, also known as a great guy, Addison Lanier. Where is he, Addison? Come on up here. Talking about these things, has to all be in the perspective of what's happening financially. Tell us some things we don't know.
Yeah, August 31st was our fiscal year end, and in the fiscal year ended, just then, we as a community put $10.7 million into Game Change, which is phenomenal. And to put a little perspective on that, dollars that come into Crossroads, we count them a little bit differently. Every year that there's been a Crossroads, we've had ministry. That's our annual budget. And then every once in a while, we have one of these surges around mission, a campaign. So last year, we were doing ministry. We were also doing Game Change, and combined, that was $24.4 million.
Yes.
That was up 75% from the year before, where we were just doing ministry, which is just incredible. So we've spent $5 million of that. Most of that has gone into acquiring Florence, doing some pre-construction work out there, about $4 million of that. $350,000 of it went into pre-construction planning at CityLink. About $500,000 was spent on South Africa, and $220,000 on India Justice things. And we are really bearing in on some spreadsheets, doing a lot of budgeting, and as we look at it, we think of ourselves as being at that place on the roller coaster ride where things are about to get very, very exciting. And they're going to start moving really fast. In the next 12 months, we're going to be spending a little over $10 million on getting Florence ready to open in August. We're going to be giving $7.3 million to CityLink to be doing what it's doing. We're going to be putting almost $600,000 into India Justice. And during the discernment period that Rob was talking about in South Africa, we're budgeting almost $200,000 for that. And so that's going to be a very, very exciting year financially. at Crossroads, as well as ministry-wise, the way the money gets spent. So how are we going to pay for that? We're going to pay for it in 3 different ways. We're going to pay for it with existing committers staying strong, people who are already engaged, continuing to stay engaged, people who are just at the early stages of their engagement, building that momentum. We're going to do it with new committers, people who are joining Game Change, coming on board and saying, I'm in for this extra piece of mission that our community is doing. And third, and really importantly, we're going to be staying strong on ministry. Because if we're not strong on ministry, and we just get strong on Game Change, the dollars don't really add up that way. Now, what we're budgeting is that together we're going to have about an 18 to 20% increase in giving. And that's ambitious. Looking at this, we've also arranged for a $5.5 million line of credit, which we've arranged with a local bank and which is just for and will be paid off during Game Change. And how much we tap into that, how much interest we have to pay, is something that's just going to be a function of what we all do with our coming forward.
Again, this is not long-term debt. This is
absolutely not.
We got tens of millions that are going to be going out in a very short period of time, and so waiting for all this stuff come in. That's what we're doing here. So we're not looking at additional long-term debt. We're not anti-long-term debt. We're just not looking for any additional. This is just to get us over the bridge of 2 massive buildings that we're building at the same time.
Right. We're not going to add a dollar of permanent long-term debt. This is just a bridge. This is to help build the kind of momentum that these guys were all talking about. It's kind of a thumbnail.
All right. Yeah, good. Addison comes into my office, or I'm in a meeting with him, or he sends me an email with like little interesting facts. He thinks they're interesting most of the time. I think they're boring. But he did have one the other day that I thought was pretty interesting. Tell people about that 30% stat.
Yeah, we were looking at fiscal year end and what was going on with Game Change on a more granular level about levels of engagement on fulfilling commitments. And what we saw was that 30% of our committers in Game Change have not gotten into the game yet. Have not begun to give. And that 30% of givers represents about $9 million of the total $48 million of Game Change. So it's something that
they would call that in the fundraising world at risk. Maybe you're in that camp, and it doesn't mean like someone's not following through in their commitment. A lot of people did that, and we're planning on doing some stuff this year end or next year end. So it's not someone's not doing the right thing. It's just an example of we are out there, folks. We are out there. If you've gotten anything from tonight, I want you to understand this is not church normal. This is not. And we have a lot of work ahead of us. When you hear 48 million, people hear, oh, 48 million, oh, it's good. No. My goodness. We are out there. Our testicles and ovaries are way out there. Way, honestly, I can't tell you. I interact with people who are in churches like ours all over the nation. I can find nobody to go to school with, nobody who is in the level of aggressiveness and faith that we're in. And so this is part of why in January we're going to have a series for people to be encouraged to fulfill Game Change commitments, and also for people to make Game Change commitments. We need to backfill, not only to do more, but to backfill, and some people might have come in hardship. In fact, if you're here today, I think you're done. Actually, sit right there, because we're going to have questions and answer. Have a seat. In fact, all the guys, we're going to come up, have a seat, because we've got a couple minutes for question and answer here. If tonight, I think we're doing this top little row, right? Oh, that one? Okay, I'm sorry.
Is that what we're doing?
I'm trying to do too many things.
Stools are gone.
If you're here tonight, you're going, man, goodness, I didn't know about all this stuff. This sounds awesome. I don't want to wait till January. You're the kind of people we like at Crossroads. Honestly, maybe you want to make a 2.5-year commitment above and beyond what you give right now. We'll just kind of dummy proof it for you. You just, on the back part of this thing, if you wanted to do that, just put your email, the amount you want to give above and beyond the next 2.5 years, and drop it at the info center. Email the amount you want to do above and beyond the next 2 years, and then we'll get in touch with you and help you out any way we can. We want to have regular and easy onboarding for people who are new around here, or at least new to finally understanding the vision. So, all right, so we'll see if our technology works. We have enough time for a little bit. It does, and then we're going to have a song.
Yeah, we've been
We've been accumulating. Okay, let's see what appropriate questions we have. You wouldn't believe how many junior high kids we had in here last time we did this. Do you have them? Oh, okay. I thought we were going to be up on the screen. Cool. What do we got?
Well, first one, John Mark. What's the vision for healthcare at CityLink?
Yeah, healthcare, we went out and Jason Singh, who actually led the medical work on the ground in Africa, came and was working with CityLink for a period of a couple months. And he went out and did kind of an environmental scan to understand what is the state of healthcare, who's currently doing what in the community, and what are the gaps. And from that, he heard loud and clear, dental, optical, two huge needs that exist in our community that aren't currently being fulfilled and need more resources. So those are going to be two of our primary focus areas. In addition to that, we also want to do a wellness center. And so that means healthy living, nutrition, and just working with people to understand living with certain things like diabetes and things like that. So that is all going to be located on the second floor, and we're excited about it. We can use it for our clients to keep them engaged and also use it to bring in the community and introduce people to CityLink. So we could have a free clinic on the weekend or things like that to get people in the door and introduce them to the program.
Great. Rob, as you're going through this discernment process, what are you learning? What are you looking keenly for, both while you're here and when you and your team are over in South Africa?
Well, first I'll say I think we learned a lot from the last situation. We learned what is cultural, what is a cultural difference, and what is not a cultural difference. What is a leadership issue or a personal issue or whatever. So as we've gone through that process, we've laid out, okay, here's what we're looking for. Here are the type of organizations we're looking for. Here are the types of leaders we're looking for in South Africa. A huge thing is what are the people around them saying, and not the people they're leading, but the people on the outside. I think I talked a little bit about that. And that's really been a driver for us as we've moved forward. And then, I think back here too, we're also learning just time. It takes time to really get to know someone. We're in this series about friendship, and that's really the process we're going through in South Africa, is becoming friends with people. And like I said, going out and playing golf, it actually really does matter. We spend a lot of time together and get to know each other. So it's a good process to go through. It's a long process, but it's kind of fun too. So.
Don, you referred briefly to the most recent trip to India. Say more about that and relationship building, and also about how it is that people over there might be expecting that they'll be treated and how they were treated on this trip.
Well, one thing that the crew did that went over, they had these conferences, which normally church conferences, really exciting. But if you live out in a village somewhere and it takes you 8 hours by bus to get into the conference, actually going into a conference that's held in a hotel and you've never gone inside a hotel before is a really big deal. And I just can't say enough about how, we really told the Go India participants beforehand, this trip is not about you. This is not a vacation. This is something that you can either do well or something you can screw up, and there'll be consequences. And they really went over and executed, really did well, listened, built relationships, just set a fantastic example that, we do have things to offer, in terms of training and in terms of education. There are just things that, Indian folks love education. They love to learn. We have people in this community who are very well versed in things like post-traumatic stress disorder and many of the issues that the girls face. So we actually have a group of volunteers right now who are working on a curriculum to talk to churches in India about, well, what is trauma? What does it look like? So our plan is we're going to use the volunteer trips to try to build up our brothers and sisters in the Indian church in areas where it's a good fit, in areas where we really do have something to give. And we're going to try to let our brothers and sisters in the Indian church deploy into areas where they really should be on the front line. And it's just going to be an amazing thing to watch.
Cool. Brian, multi-site. People who were at the groundbreaking at Florence saw the plans, and there are going to be offices down there for staff at Florence, and got a picture of that. What about Mason? What about staff for Mason, and what's going on with that?
What about staff for Mason?
Yeah, and a staff on site up there.
Yes, we've actually have got a great relationship with the Mason schools. It's really great when you enter into a renting partnership with somebody. Actually, we've just found regularly over the last 15 years, organizations and people in organizations, when they get to know our people at Crossroads, they like us. What do you know? They really do, because back to the India thing, we just have some of the best servant-hearted, loving people that either choose this church or become loving as a result of this church. It's really, really great. And so we went from, in Mason, changing bylaws and board members being skeptical about a church being in their property. We went from that to them being ecstatic that we're there, wanting to make the lease longer, and having a great rental agreement on an empty, vacant, how many thousand square feet was that? 10,000 square foot building right beside the school where we rent. We rent a school, and there's a big, huge white house that now we have occupancy of for staff, and they're doing some community groups, some other community building there. And so it's just really the best of all. If you're not going to own your own facility right now, and Mason will eventually, but if you're not going to own your own facility right now, you couldn't get better than a great building with good rent at the right location and offices and a place to do community building right beside. It's really phenomenal. Yeah. All right, hey, let's thank these guys. And why don't we all stand right now? Let's stand, and I think we've got the band come out for one more deal. Guys, I got to tell you, that was pretty impressive. That was through a lot of material, And we're just trying to feel this out as we go. Was this helpful for you guys? Was it helpful? All right, good. Well, you send any of us an email. We all get our emails directly. Love to help you more, or just hear your feedback on tonight, because we're just trying to have different ways to value all of you for all of your hard sacrifices, and also have easy additional on-ramps for people who are newer to Crossroads.